Hey everybody, it's Chainsaw Reacts back once again with another video for you guys. Today guys, I'm doing another book review for the channel, my second ever book review for the channel. Today I'm reviewing Arrow, A Generation of Vipers. If you didn't see my first book review on the channel, I highly recommend it. It was The Flash, The Haunting of Barry Allen. I recommend checking that out because this is part 2 to the story that is started in this book. It's a duology, and honestly, I highly recommend it. Let's first get into the synopsis on the back of the book to kind of give you guys a little bit of an idea of what to expect from this novel. Still suffering from mysterious blurs in his powers, the Scarlet Speedster is finding Oliver Queen's rigorous training regimen hard to follow. Teams Flash and Arrow are racing to find a cure for him, but instead discover that if the glitches can't be stopped, Barry will blur out forever. The hero's frantic chase leads them to the hostile nation of Markovia, where they face an army of mercenaries and assassins and confront the mysterious figure known as Count Wallenstein. Real quick, just to make it very, very clear, with the titling here, The Flash, The Haunting of Barry Allen, and Arrow, A Generation of Vipers, it's very clear that this is more of a Flash book. This is more of an Arrow book. However, the crossover already started here with part 1, so they're fully integrated and the crossover is throughout the entire book versus here where a good portion is just Team Flash. But in this, Team Arrow, Team Flash working together, and wow, I had a great time reading this. I read this like I think twice as fast than reading The Flash, The Haunting of Barry Allen. That's how invested I was in this book. A couple of reasons why I liked this book honestly more than this one, even though I really did enjoy this, is that this is setup. This is full-on crossover, no need for really any setup. There is a couple of moments where they're reminding you of things just in case you forgot, or just in case you are like, did that happen in the first book? I can't remember. Like, they make sure to remind you just in case. But for me, since I read them back to back, it was like, I already know. But it's the fact that this is more focused on Team Arrow, even though this is a crossover full-on book between Team Arrow and Team Flash, like I've been saying, but more focused on Oliver Queen and Team Arrow, which is what I really enjoyed about it. Like, I have issues with the show Arrow, and The Flash as well, but I've always loved Arrow more, so I think I appreciated this more. And just what the writers did with this, Clay Griffith and Susan Griffith, I feel like, and they wrote this as well, that I felt like they just handled really well in terms of handled Starling City, whatever you want to call it, depending on the timeline, and just how they handled explaining everything. In order for these books to work in general, and I'm not talking about just any specific one, is that you have to believe when they're explaining things, whether it's descriptions, whether it's explaining something we've already seen on the shows, and that they're, of course, having here within these books, that are they doing a good job of explaining it? Are they doing a good job of making us see it, even though we've already seen it? Like, are they able to describe it pretty well? Are you able to follow the story well? Are they describing things and making you visualize things as they should? And I feel like with both of these, and definitely with this one, damn, there is some really good writing here in terms of making us see stuff that we've already seen in the show, but the way they're explaining it and the way, like, okay, this is actually a good description of that location. This is an accurate description of a fight scene. I think it was just really, really well done. If you saw my review for The Haunting of Barry Allen, you know that I had a couple critiques with the authors in terms of how they were handling some of the dialogue. Not much, but just enough for me to notice, and I had to point out in my review. And some of the chapter things as well, in terms of certain chapters could have been shortened or placed somewhere else in the story, or maybe just not explained at all because maybe it was too much information at times. As I said, they both wrote these 2 books. I feel like they understood that critique. I'm not sure if they were told after they finished this one to kind of look at this and try to make it, a little bit more polished. I'm not sure. But the chapters and the way they were able to tell the story here, I feel like they maybe learned from their mistakes from this book. It's unfortunate because I kind of wish they would have handled this a little bit better. But in terms of seeing the growth, and there's still some dialogue stuff where I'm like, I don't know if that character would say that, but it's not as much here. But I still did notice it, but especially for the chapters, they definitely improved on that. There's still a lot of chapters. I think there's 42 chapters in here, but I think they structured it better to where we need this backstory. We need to see this stuff happening because it makes sense for the narrative. I'm getting into this a little late in the review, but it's okay because I do want to talk about it briefly, not much. Like I said, no spoilers. There's a brand new character, as far as I can tell, that was introduced in this book that I don't think has ever been introduced into Arrow the show, and I had to look it up, and I'm like, I don't remember this character at all. But it's an interesting reveal, and I feel like it adds to the depth of this book, because I feel like if they didn't introduce this new character that I think was an interesting addition, I don't think this book would have, at least for me, kept me as invested as it was. It wasn't like a thing to where if this character was completely missing and we had no idea this character was even thought of to being a part of this book, that it would have made me go, this is missing something, because I don't know, they might have went into a different direction, but the direction they went with this new character, definitely interesting. I think it's pretty obvious, as I've been saying, that I enjoyed reading more Arrow: A Generation of Vipers than The Flash: The Haunting of Barry Allen, just because of my love for Arrow, but I just love the fact that I read both these books because of the fact that when I was younger, I read quite a bit, and then I stopped for the longest time. So I want to thank my past self from a few years ago. I went to Barnes & Noble, found these 2 books just sitting on the shelf, and I'm like, okay, at some point I'll read these. Well, I'm glad whatever happened in the timeline leading me to this point where I'm like, I'm going to read this and then I'm going to read this. And I had a great time because I'm going to be jumping into a book pretty soon after this because I'm now fully invested to get back into reading and all that. And so I do want to thank the authors and everybody behind these 2 books that came together to say, let's tell a new crossover type story. So if you have any interest whatsoever in this, trust me, check these out. And let me say this. Don't just pick up this and read it. You're going to be confused. Will you find enjoyment out of it? Possibly. You're missing a lot of context and a lot of information. You have to get this as well. Read this first, then jump in. Trust me, it is worth it. And they're pretty cheap as well. I mean, I think they're pretty cheap on Amazon right now. If they have them in Barnes & Noble or whatever bookstore around you, if they have them, they should be pretty cheap. But trust me, go pick these up. Trust me. That is a review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I didn't want to go into too much specifics and kind of ruin things for you guys because I don't want to spoil it for you, because for me, I blazed through this. I mean, I took my time because this is my first book really getting back into reading. I just blazed through this shit because I couldn't stop. I just wanted to keep reading. There was times where I'm like, I could play a video game or I could read more of this. And I chose this more than the other stuff like video games or TV or whatever. I chose this because I was really invested. And as someone who's been loving the Arrowverse for years, have been openly saying my problems and everything with it, I really enjoyed sitting here and actually reading these books and enjoying this new crossover. So I want to thank everybody a part of these 2 books. The authors, everybody behind the scenes that kind of came together to make these and to make it happen. I want to thank them so much because, wow, I had a great time reading these books. So anyways, that's my review. Hope you guys are doing well. I will talk to you guys soon. Peace out.